Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Leslie Wyatt, the Director of Compliance at SoftPro, and we would like to welcome you to episode 33, if you can believe it. And today we are going to be talking about tips for your 2021 1099 filing, which I know is a pretty hot topic this time of year, so we generally try and do a webinar on it. Believe it or not, this is our first one of 2021. We've been busy, and this is the first thing we could really get to. So we're going to try and get back on a normal schedule moving forward. But again, we do appreciate it. And I just want to go over a few housekeeping. If you have any questions or comments, you can use the questions feature in your GoToWebinar. It should be somewhere in your screen, either to the right or left or down at the bottom. Everybody's settings are a little bit different. So if you have any questions throughout, please go ahead and type them in. We'll try and address as many as we can. And if by chance we don't get to your question, we will reach out afterwards. And if we think it's a question that's pertinent to everybody, we will go ahead and include that in our follow-up email. Speaking of our follow-up email, we do record these sessions. I know a lot of people like to go back and listen or share them with their peers or coworkers. In a couple of days, we will send a follow-up email and link to you with this recording so that you can either, like I said, listen or share. We do encourage it. And if you have any questions, of course, even post the webinar, please just reach out or send us an email and we'll happily get you in touch with the right people. So with that said, I am going to turn it over to Rhonda. Rhonda is a trainer at SoftPro, and she has been with us for 6 years and travels all the time. And we were just talking about the fact that she just came back from sunny California for several weeks. I'm a little jealous because it's very cold here in Chicago. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Rhonda, and thank you so much for doing this for us.
Absolutely. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Rhonda. And as Leslie said, I am a trainer here with SoftPro, and we're going to be going through today some of the tips for you guys for your 1099 filing. We're going to look at both the Select and the Classic and Enterprise versions of the software as we're going through with these tips. So just depending on which one of those applications you're operating under will kind of depend on what you guys are going to end up seeing and doing as we go through with these tips. Now, the first thing that I do want to start off with is going to be here that there is going to be a mandatory Pro 1099 update that is going to be required for all versions of our software. This is due to the IRS changing the electronic submission files for the tax year of 2021. Now, if you guys are standard and enterprise users, you're just going to need to go in and run your Pro 1099 updater through the SoftPro 360 console, which I'm going to show you guys here in just a second. Even if you've ran it previously, you need to go ahead and complete it again to make sure that it has all of the new update information that is going to be required for you guys to successfully submit these recordings, or those filings, I should say. For you guys who are on SoftPro Select and you are an on-prem user, you will need to reach out to our SoftPro support team in order to get that update run for you. There had been a time when appointments were set up for that, and if you were unable to make that appointment, you do need to reach out to SoftPro support again to schedule a time for them to run the updated script for that 1099 update. And for you guys who are Select users who happen to be hosted users, you have no worries. The update was applied to the software automatically. So to backtrack just a moment, to you standard and enterprise users, what you're going to do when you go in is in your SoftPro 360 console, which you know you can access either utilizing the 360 icon or using the services drop down. Under the add-in section of that 360 console, you're going to run the SoftPro Pro1099 updater, and that is what is going to allow you to update to the current tax year, so that when you guys create that submission file to upload into the IRS's FIRE website, it will have all of the correct information for that current filing. Okay, so you will do it through the 360 console. So let's take a few minutes and let's talk about what those steps are to make sure that you are have everything set up correctly in order to create that submission file to upload to the IRS. There are going to be 5 steps that you do always need to make sure are done. First off, you have to make sure that the application has been configured. If you guys have previously submitted electronically in the past, then that configuration is in place. If you happen to be a brand new user to any version of our software, that information would have been put in place during the time of your implementation, in which it goes out and it configures it to know who you are as a company and also include things such as your EIN numbers as well as your transmitter control codes, which is the information that the IRS uses to identify you. You're always going to want to make sure you run those exception reports, right? You want to run those and make sure that all of the information has been pulled over into the 1099 record accurately. This lets you know with these reports anything that is missing so that you can go back in and make sure that those records have been updated with all of the necessary information that the IRS is going to require for that submission. You want to correct any orders that you need to correct, again, with any information you find from those reports. Then we're going to talk about creating the submission file and how you guys are going to upload it into the IRS website. So I'm going to start here and kind of talk a few minutes about those reports and how you guys are going to correct those orders. Just kind of want to walk through again, what are the criteria points in an order that is required for those 1099 records? Well, the first thing is your transaction type is always going to be indicated as a purchase. So depending on the version of the software that you're operating under, if you guys are select users, as soon as you create that order as a purchase, you have that seller contact, you have a closing or settlement date today or in the past, and your escrow or order status is not canceled or duplicated, and you did not indicate that this order needed to be excluded from IRS submission, then the software, as we know, automatically creates that record and pushes it over for you into Pro 1099. For my standard and enterprise users out there, you guys will still have to meet the same criteria points. The difference will be you will just have to export it into Pro 1099 instead of it actually being there. So let's take a second and kind of look at what these points of these criteria points are within the individual orders itself. So I'm going to take a second here, guys, and we're going to start with those who are on SoftPro Select. When you're in SoftPro Select, in your individual orders, there are 2 screens that you're primarily going to use to make sure you have hit those criteria points. Screen number 1 is going to be your seller contact screen. Here under your seller contact, you are going to want to make sure that you have put into play the Social Security or the EIN number for that seller contact, that you have entered their forwarding address. That is the address, that field that is going to populate onto the 1099 record itself. Okay, so from a seller standpoint, we need the EIN or the social. We need to make sure the seller's forwarding address has been entered. And then the second screen you're going to use is going to be down here in those escrow and closing screens. It's going to be your seller proceeds in 1099-S. You always want to make sure that you have identified for that 1099 record what has taken place, and that you have both provided and that the seller has acknowledged the 1099-S form. You would come in here to indicate property services received. This is marked off in those instances that the seller may be receiving property in addition to or maybe in lieu of proceeds. Things such as a 1031 exchange would be an example. If they are considered a foreign person under the IRS rules, which you can find on the IRS's website, this is where you always want to come in and indicate that you both provided and that the seller has acknowledged by signing excuse me, the substitute 1099-S form. That form can be found in the documents of the order. And then you also have the capability to indicate if they are exempt from 1099 reporting. Exempt can would be marked if you indicate with the exemption form or the certification for no reporting that they should be exempt from that reporting. You can manually come in and mark them. The only time that the exempt checkbox will be automatically marked for you is if your seller is an organization and you identified on that seller contact screen that the seller organizational type was a corporation. If that is the case, it will automatically mark it exempt since corporations are exempt from reporting. So if you do have a seller who is an organization, make sure that when you are choosing the type of organization that you choose the accurate type. So for you select users, those are the two biggest screens and primary screens you want to address to make sure those criteria points are in place. For users who are on enterprise or standard, you are going to go into your orders and you too are going to access your seller screen as well as your proceeds in 1099-S screen. Now here on your seller screen, it looks to the actual address of the seller. So you want to make sure that the seller's address has been entered. You're going to use the More button in the seller contact screen in order to input their social security number. When I click on More, it opens up a screen for more fields to be filled in regards to that seller. And this is where their social or their EIN number will be entered. And the same as I indicated earlier for those select users, it doesn't matter which application you're operating under. If your seller is an organization, you always want to make sure that the type matches the type of organization. Because if you choose a corporation, the software is going to assume it is exempt and it is going to mark it as such and gray it out. And the only way to open that field up is for you to come in and actually choose the appropriate organizational type. Now for the proceeds and 1099 screen, I'm going to navigate over here into the CDF tab. And when I go to the CDF tab, here's going to be my division of proceeds and 1099. And again, it's going to look just like we saw within the select application. You're going to indicate things such as property services received, foreign person. You always want to mark that you both gave them and they acknowledged the substitute 1099-S form. And then this is where you can also manually indicate that they are exempt. Now, as I indicated earlier, if you are a select user and those criteria points have been met, then you have automatically created that record in Pro 1099 module of the select application. For you guys operating under the standard and enterprise versions, you are going to have to export that information into the Pro 1099 module. You can export directly from the order or the file itself. Once you have indicated, right, that those criteria points are in place, you can click on the File menu drop-down and you can choose the option to export. When you choose to export, it gives you the capability to choose to export to Pro 1099. Once you click OK and have exported that record, it will actually open up the Pro 1099 module for you, and it will then populate that record into the fields shown here to the left. Okay, so yours will be exported over. Select users, yours will automatically go to the Pro 1099 module as part of the select application. This is where you guys are going to find your reports. Now for select users, reports are found right here in the ribbon. You'll get a flyout window. And this is where you want to come in and you want to run that exceptions report. That is a rinse and repeat type of report that needs to be ran until you can run it and it does not reflect any missing data for any 1099 record for the current tax year you are going to be creating the submission order for or file for. Okay. For standard and enterprise users, you too can access that same exception report in your application of Pro 1099. Under reports, you're going to come in and you're going to run that exception report. Again, it will list out any information that was missing from any of the records based off of the tax year that you are looking to create the submission file for. Okay. So now we know, right, what we have to do in order to make sure we're prepared for that submission. So how do we actually create the submission order or file itself? Now, if you are a standard or enterprise user, you're going to come into Tools, and here under Tools, you're going to come into Produce that IRS submission order. If you are a select customer, then when you go into the Pro 1099 ribbon in the module here, you're going to have a button that says Create Submission File. Now, no matter which application of our software you're operating under, it is the same submission wizard that you are going to follow to actually create the submission file itself. So if I were to come in and click Create Submission File, I'm going to get a window that pops up that says Welcome, and it's going to walk me through the wizard to create my submission file for the tax year 2021. This, guys, is really going to be your first visual to make sure that, number one, you have ran that updater, right? Remember, that's the first thing we talked about. You want to make sure, even if you've done it previously, that you have the most current Pro 1099 updater script run due to some changes in the electronic filing from the IRS. If you come and you click to create and your wizard pops up and this is not the year you are creating the submission order for, that's your first indicator that, hey, I don't have that updater ran, and you need to reach out. Remember, select users that are on-prem, you guys are going to need to reach out to SoftPro support. For you guys operating the enterprise or the standard versions, you can run that updater directly through your SoftPro 360 console. And for you hosted customers, it's already been done. Okay. So no matter what tax year you're creating it for, if it comes out to 2023 and we're starting to do our submission file, this submission year should always be the year you're creating the file for. You're just going to come in, verify that year, and then you're going to walk through the submission wizard, and I'm going to click Next. When I do, it's going to populate that TCC code. Remember, that stands for your transmitter control code. That's the code that the IRS provides to you. You have to have that in order to actually electronically submit your records. That's how the IRS identifies you. If you do not have it, you can go online to the IRS's FIRE website and you can electronically apply with they call it a Form 4419 for that TCC number. You can indicate then your payer number or ID. You can also indicate if this is going to be a test file submission. Now, the IRS does always suggest that you guys send out a test file. It is encouraged to make sure that everything goes according to plan and there aren't any hiccups, so to speak, before you send your actual submission file. When you are creating, and if this is a test submission, you can mark it as such. And they do recommend that you contain at least 11 records in that test submission that you send. And then you would click Next. When you do, it again is going to populate your submission year. So it looks to where we originally saw it was going to look to the year 2021. You have the capability here to choose whether or not you want it to include records in which the seller has zero proceeds. So that is a choice you can make at the time you are creating it. It is just an option. You could choose the option if needed, and then you would click next. Then it's going to ask a couple of questions. And sometimes this one gets a little confusing because our first reaction is to say, well, yes, this is a return. But this is actually asking you the question, is this a corrected return? It's going to actually default to no, because we're assuming this is your original return, the first time you were submitting it out to the IRS for this tax year. If for some reason one of those records gets rejected and it comes back to you and the IRS has you make corrections to that record, then the next time you create that submission file to submit, you would indicate that it is only going to contain those records that were corrected for you to return to them. So we're going to say this is our first initial creation. So we're going to leave it at no and then hit next. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to browse out into my computer and I'm going to find the location on my computer that I need the submission file to be saved to. So we're actually going to save it to, let's say, our desktop here. And then from there, we'll grab it at the time we get ready to submit it to the IRS utilizing the FIRE website. So if I go out and click on Browse, you guys will be able to see here where I actually have a folder for IRS tax. It would be our recommendation that you guys put something on your desktop or in a secure drive that you may have, and you have an IRS tax folder set up for those submissions that you are creating. And the reason is, and you'll see when we get a little bit further along in this wizard, the IRS recommends that you have at least 3 years of submission files on record. So you want to make sure you have a location in which you can save them to. I'm going to choose my IRS tax and click OK, and it's going to indicate where I am saving that directly, the path where I'm saving it onto my computer. Then I'm going to click Next. So this is where I was telling you just a second ago that you do have to actually confirm that you understand that the IRS recommends that you have at least 3 years saved for those submission files. You're going to come in and indicate that yes, you do understand that you need to keep those records. And then next, when we click, it is going to actually create the IRS electronic submission file itself. So I'm going to click on Next. When I do, it processes. Then it's going to say, okay, we've created it. Now it is up to you to understand that you may incur penalties when submitting those records if there are any exceptions. That's why it is very important that you are running those exception reports to ensure that you have entered all of the information that is required for those records so nothing gets kicked back to you. Penalties may be imposed if those records contain any missing information. Again, before you can complete the actual creation of that submission file, you do have to indicate that you have read and you understand that everything must be correct. If you think it is not, then you need to click cancel. And then you need to go run that exceptions report to make sure that everything has been entered as needed. I'm going to click Next, and then it's going to give me the last thing here to let me know that it has completed creating that file. It shows me the path where it is going to save that file. And then it's letting me know that all we have done so far is just create the submission. It is your responsibility, right? Your responsibility to submit that information to the IRS's FIRE website. Now, we do give you the ability to check here to go directly to their website from here if you're ready to go ahead and upload it to the IRS as well. Or you can just click finish, and you can also access the FIRE website at a later time. If I click on finish, it just brings me back to my screen. I have here on my desktop, remember, I had, oops, wrong button there. I had my IRS submission folder. And if I go into my submission folder, so bear with me just a second here, get out of here. Technology at its best. All right. If I go into that IRS submission folder, I can go into my desktop. I can find that folder. Notice here it saved my submission file. Now, my next recommendation to you would be, as soon as you have saved it to the location on your computer that you wish to have it saved, go to that location and rename it. Rename it however you choose. For me, I'm just going to put the tax year that I have created it for, because again, you're going to want to have at least 3 years on hand, and that will help you be able to easily identify which submission file it is. Okay. So that is how you guys are going to go through and create the submission file itself. Now, let's say you've created it, you've saved it to that location on your computer that you want to save it to, and now 2 days later, you're ready to now actually upload it to the FIRE website. You can access the FIRE website directly through the application of SoftPro you're operating. If you are a select user in the Pro 1099 module, to the far right of the ribbon is going to be an icon that says Open the IRS FIRE website. When you click on that icon, it will open up a tab reflecting the IRS FIRE home. And from here, you will be able to walk through the steps to log on and begin the process to upload your submission file directly to them for submission. If you are a standard or an enterprise user, you're going to access your Pro 1099 module from your desktop. When you go into Pro 1099, if you come over to the Tools menu drop down, you're going to have the option to access the IRS FIRE website. You're going to go in and access the website that way. When you click on that option, it will actually open up that website page in the internet browser that you guys are utilizing. So that's how we're going to go in and we're going to access the FIRE website once we're ready to send the submission file up. So let's say I've gone in, I've clicked to open the IRS website, I've logged in, and now I am ready to send the information for my returns. So you log in, and in your menu options, it's going to give you the capability to send your return info. For those of you, when I was speaking a few moments ago about making sure you had that transmitter code, that TCC from the IRS, this is the form 4419 that you would need to fill out, and you can do it electronically here directly in their website to receive that number if you do not have it. I want to go in and send my returns, so I'm going to click here to send my returns. It's going to take me out to the next screen, and again, we want to go in and we want to put in that TCC. You have to, that's how they identify you. You can also enter your EIN number. Once you have entered that information, you would then click submit. It is then going to populate your information. You're going to verify it. It's going to pull in your company name, your address, your email, and your contact information. This contact information is going to be for the person that the IRS will need to reach out to should they come up with any issues with your actual submission file. Once you have verified that information, you're going to click Accept. It's then going to give you some options to choose what it is you're actually submitting. Now, here is where you can submit that test file first. So again, if you had chosen the option as the IRS recommends to send a test file out first, this is where you would come to submit that test file. You can also come in to submit your original file, which means none of that information has been reported yet for this current tax year. You can also use this same screen for those correction files. So again, if anything is incorrect, maybe something was corrupted and the IRS has sent it back to you to make corrections, when you come in to resubmit, you would choose a correction file or a replacement file, again, for those corrupted types of transmissions. Let's say we came in and we clicked original file. Then it's going to give you some legalese here. So basically, it's just breaking it down for you. And it's saying, look here, if the files you sent us are good, then we're going to release all this information 10 calendar days after we receive it. But if any of this information is bad, you're going to have to follow the replacement procedures that are going to be sent with that bad submission. And again, you have to acknowledge that you understand under the penalties of perjury that what you are sending is true and accurate, that you are not sending any false information, and it is going to require that you enter a PIN number. That PIN number is also provided to you by the IRS. If you do not have that PIN number, then you will need to reach out to the IRS directly to receive that, because you will have to have that in order to finalize the submission of those records through the electronic website. Once you have entered that PIN number, you click Submit, and this is where you're now going to browse out to your desktop or wherever you saved that submission order, and you're going to then browse out and pull it in. It's going to populate the information here in the field to the left with the submission name, and then you're going to click Upload, and that's going to upload it directly into the website for the IRS to begin their process. Once it's uploaded, you're done for the time being. Now, if you wanted to come back in and to check the status of your electronic submission, you can always log back into the FIRE website. And again, you can always access that website directly through your SoftPro application, whether it is Select or Enterprise or Standard. And in those same menu options, once you have logged in, it is going to give you the capability to check your file status. You would choose to check the file status. It will give you a screen to input your search criteria for what you're looking for. So again, you're going to indicate that TCC as well as your EIN. And then you can choose with the appropriate radio button here any of the search options. Do you want to see everything, just good files, just bad, what hasn't been processed, or any files that were sent last year? You can go in, pull in the information that's needed, hit search, and then it's going to give you that information below. So here's just kind of a snippet of what the information can look like when it comes back in through those search results. If it has not yet been processed, your results will say specifically it has not yet been processed. It will let you know if it is good and has been released, and it will also let you know if it was a bad submission. So you'll know which ones may be coming back to you to be corrected. Okay. So that's how, guys, you're going to upload it into the IRS's website. Now, when does all of this have to happen? Well, here are some key dates for you guys to kind of write down and remember. Your sellers had to receive a 1099-S copy by the 15th of this month. Okay. The electronic filing date to upload to the IRS is going to be by March 31st of this year. If you need to file for an extension for your 1099 filings, your extension has to be requested by March 31st. And we're going to walk through here in just a few moments how you guys would actually file for that extension. If you are going to do a paper filing, then you have to have that done by the end of February, so February the 28th. And then the last day for you to submit a test file, which again is recommended, is going to be March the 16th. So these are some key dates to keep in mind for the submission and receipting of those 1099 records. Okay. So what if I'm not going to be ready come March 31st to actually get it all together? I've been super busy. I haven't been able to run that exception report right. I need to make sure all of my information is in place. I don't want to send any misconstrued info, so I want to file an extension. When you go to file an extension, you too are going to file that extension within the IRS's website itself. Okay, so when you access the FIRE website and you go to log on, here it is going to give you the capability of going in and filing the extension 8809. You can say whether it is a yes or a no, and then you would enter the appropriate information that is required. Remember, anything that is typically indicated with an asterisk in front of any field is a required field, which means you will have to indicate your TCC, your EIN, the name of your company, both your user ID and your password. And then you would go in and you would log in. Once you've logged in, it is going to be one of those options in your menu options to choose from. You're going to go in and you're going to choose for an extension of time request. Here, it is going to be a fill-in form that you're actually going to fill in online directly here within their website. Instead of actually having to fill out a paper form these days and upload it, it will be a fillable form for you to go in and input the required information for that extension. Here, the option is basically going to give you about a 30-day automatic extension. Okay, it doesn't give you additional time to give the seller their copies. This is simply an extension of time for you to actually submit the electronic record to the IRS itself. That's what this is indicating to you, that you, again, it's not what you have to give out to the seller, it's going to be what you have to actually upload to the IRS itself. If you need more than 30 days, you will have to actually submit a paper form. You cannot do that through the FIRE website, and you can follow the information here as to how to download that form from the IRS website itself and what you need to do in order to file for an additional 30-day period. You can then click to continue or go to the main menu. Here, when you are filling in the information that is fillable, it is going to reflect the current tax year above. You're going to want information on returns to be filed electronically. You are going to type in what type of returns. So you've got your 1099s here. You're going to check that first option, and then you're going to fill in your payer information. And this is going to be the information that's going to be put in for you to submit for that 30-day extension. And then you would come in below and click submit. It would give you all of your information again for you to go in and review. And then you can go in and click accept. Then it's going to populate, show the type of return, and then it's going to give you your extension due date. So it will let you know the days that you have been extended out for that submission. You can print this for your records if you have not already done so, and then it asks if you have another extension of time to file. You can indicate yes or no. We have heard through our support team that there has been some issues sometimes with the user ID or the password for logging into the FIRE website. So I did want to take just a few minutes here and give you a couple of hints to help you along with that. If you go to log on, guys, and the issue is with the actual ID name or the password itself, try to create a new password. If that doesn't work, you can reach out and call the IRS at the number listed here, 866-455-7438, and they can actually go in and reset that password for you. So that would be kind of step number one. Go in and see if you have any issues. And then here are some hints of some things that can kind of help you when you're creating those user IDs. Some things to kind of keep in mind. Number one, the IRS won't allow you to have any sort of punctuation in your name. So if you have a hyphen or you have commas, etc., leave those out. Don't include any sort of punctuation. If the transmitter, if you guys have the original letter from the IRS that shows the TCC, it'll also show you the company name that the IRS gave you. So try to mimic that, because that's going to take out any of the information that may not be usable in that ID itself. Again, don't use a hyphen sometimes in EIN numbers. Sometimes that causes it to give you some login errors at times. Confirm all your information's correct, right? We have so many passwords we have to remember for all kinds of different applications, that make sure that we have the right one that we're entering when we're entering to log into the system. And then some users have had success with the following types of modifications. So number one, if your company has a name, a number in its name, like first, actually spell it out instead of using the numerals. If your company starts with the, drop that. Instead of it being the disgruntled animal farm, just put in disgruntled animal farm. If your company has a PA or sometimes a PLLC, something like that at the end of the name of the company, drop that as well. Sometimes that assists and helps when you are trying to log in. Again, if you do have a really long name, kind of like John Smith, Attorney at Law, PLLC, just put John A. Smith versus the whole Attorney at Law information. That sometimes has been successful in being able to log in without any errors. If you have received a penalty letter, that will also show you the IRS's name that they have on file for you. So again, try to mimic that to make sure that it flows according to plan. And then if you have filed an extension in the previous year, look to that as well. These are just some hints and tips you can use to actually go in and help with that login, troubleshoot it. Any information that you need, though, troubleshooting, if you still go through all of this and can't get in, you do need to reach out to the IRS, because this is into their website. We are just giving you access to it through your SoftPro application. So they will be the ones who will need to assist you to actually log in should none of these tips work, or you are not able to create a new one. And if the company has changed its name since your original submission for that transmitter control code, you can always go in and try your old company name as well. And then last but not least, refresh. Sometimes that does a world of wonders, helps us regenerate everything, and it populates through accordingly. And then here is our SoftPro help site, guys. Don't forget, you have access to this 24/7 in any application you are operating under SoftPro. You can access the help by either clicking F1 within whatever SoftPro application you are in, or if you are a select user, you can also access help by clicking on my cursor over here, the question mark that is in the upper right-hand corner, right under the red X that we're not supposed to click. This will take you out to help. And for those of you who are in enterprise or standard, you just want to click on the help menu heading drop down and choose help topics. That will always take you out to our help site, which will give you more information on 1099s. There are videos and job aids that you can access at any time, as well as a lot of the questions and answers to those questions that we tend to get during this time of the year for those filings. So that is some tips to help you guys get through your 1099 submission. Any questions did they have
Thanks,
for me,
Rhonda.
guys? Yeah.
Yes, we do have some questions. Do you have time to take some questions?
I have time to take a couple of questions, sure.
Okay, great. So I was able to answer a few, but the couple I wanted you to talk about was, the first one is, does the automatic exemption apply to LLCs, PAs, LLPs, as well as corporations?
No, it only applies to a corporation. You're only going to see that when a corporation is chosen. So it defaults in select to a corporation, and that's why we like to really point it out, because it is going to automatically say it. It looks to the actual drop-down field, not to the actual name itself. So notice here, I put in corporation, and if I go to my 1099S screen, it's grayed out and checked off. But if I go in and say, no, it was actually an LLC, a partnership, whatever other type, then when I choose that type, it keeps it open so that I make the determination if it is exempt. Now, if you choose a type if you have a type of company or organization that's not listed in this drop down, then choose other as your catch-all. Just don't choose corporation.
Yeah, and just add to it, generally, someone else asked a question and I answered it. But the general rule is, if the LLC files as a corporation, then you don't need a 1099 and anything else you do. So just kind of think of it like that. So the next question I'll have here, it says, if the seller is military and has an FPO or an APO address, do you check the foreign in the address section? And she says if she doesn't, it shows up on her exception report.
I would choose the foreign because it's going to give you those fields to allow you to input the FPO information as well as identify the country. If it does pull up in your exception report, I would pull the actual record out of 1099. So you can always go into Pro 1099 and you can search for that individual record to see how it is reflected on the 1099 record. So sometimes it may appear on the exception report, and as long as it is accurate on the record itself, you should be fine with the submission.
That we had here is, can a report be run that shows all orders with a settlement status of canceled?
You can run a report that shows all orders with a settlement status of canceled. It's not a Pro 1099 report. It's actually found under Pro Form reports. There is a reports that can be run by status, and you can run it by any of the three statuses found in select. And you get to, when you run the report, you can filter it to just those reports that have been marked as canceled or duplicate, depending on if you're using like the toggler, if you have to switch settlement types. But yes, there is a report under the Proform reports called Orders by Order Status that allows you to choose just to see those that are canceled. And you can put in the date range you want to run it for, so you could do it for an entire year if needed.
Speaking of reports, someone says a submission file shows count of files being submitted. Is there a report that they can run to compare numbers so that they're sure their submission file has the same correct number, meaning, can they run something out of Proform to match up to their Pro?
So that sounds like a classic user. And so in Pro 1099, under your reports, there is a report that is your list of database records, but I don't think you can run it. You can run it by year. So you could run this report, list of database records. You could put in the tax year, January to December. You could run that report for that, and it would show you all of the records that were reflected, and that should match the records that you either, if you did a multi-import, which you can do here through Pro 1099 in Enterprise and Standard, you can go in and import multiple data files at once. If it says, hey, we just pulled over, 79, then it should match what's on that database report.
Okay, sounds great. Someone here says, for 1031 exchange, can you please tell us which box is appropriate to check for recording?
For recording?
I think they might mean reporting.
Yeah. So I would use property services received, because they're either on the front end or the back end, and they're receiving property in lieu of proceeds, or they are, so I would choose property services received.
Okay, actually, that's a good point to this next question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then the next question is about property services received. It says, can you give us an example of a scenario where this will happen? Or is there any time a seller is going to use a 1031 intermediary service? So they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, so I would use it in conjunction with the 1031, because, if a seller is selling property and they're not actually getting $249,000 or $250,000, right? The property's going the money's going to sit with a QI until they find their replacement property. So they're not technically in getting those proceeds in hand. They are just sitting and holding it in play until such time as they have found that replacement property, and then they go in and do what they need to replace it with the monies that the intermediary is holding for them. There have been situations just that I know of for myself. I don't know if it happens in every state across the country, but I know I have been back in my escrow days in situations where a seller may sell property and convey over some additional property in conjunction with that sale. So that would be a case of where property services were received because their sales price was not just the monetary amount, but it was also a part of the value of the property that they conveyed along with it. So that would be another example of property services received.
Okay, so instance, can they reprint a 1099 for a recipient?
Yes, absolutely. You can reprint the 1099 either in the Pro 1099 module, no matter which application you're running under. It's going to give you the capability to print that record once you search that record out. You can also go into your documents at any given time and reprint a 1099 for any order.
Let's see. If an entity is exempt, meaning individuals or a company, do all three boxes need to be checked on the seller proceeds and 1099 screen for reporting purposes?
I lean toward yes. And the reason I do is, to be honest, the 1099 provided and the 1099 signed, the IRS really isn't getting that information. That's more of a checks or balances for you in-house to be able to know, yes, we provided them the information. Yes, we received the information back. If these boxes are not checked, then those orders will appear on your exception report as a warning, just letting you know that you did not indicate them. In order to get them off of the exception report, they have to be marked. So if I'm looking at it from an escrow point, I provided them the 1099. They acknowledged it, and they also signed the exemption form. And based off of the information they answered on there, I, being the settlement agent, have determined that they should be exempt. So I'm just marking them all off, because even though I gave them that, maybe I also gave them a record just in case they did not meet those criteria points to be exempt from reporting. But primarily,
Okay.
it's just to get it off of the exception report.
Somebody asked, if we provide them with a copy of closing, do we have to mail another copy before February 15th? And I know the answer is, I think, pretty sure no. That's more of an internal process
Correct.
of how people want to handle it. Yeah, so it's completely up to you if that's what your company wants to do. But if, as long as you have provided it to them at some point, that's all you're expected to do.
You know, some
Let's
companies like to
see.
send them back out, because if not, then they're bombarded with all those phone calls this time of year. I need this for my taxes. I need this for my taxes. So some just bite the bullet and send them all out first of the year.
Someone else asked, and I'm not 100%, maybe you know this, but I'm not understanding the full question. So it says, do you have to send a test file before sending the copy to seller? So I'm wondering if they mean a test file to the IRS for the submission, or I don't know exactly what they're asking, because you would have provided the 1099 at closing, or you provide them another copy like we just discussed. But I don't know if you have any more insight on that.
No, I don't. I mean, I'm kind of with you. If you've already sent it, then you've covered yourself. If you gave it to them at closing, you've covered yourself. And as far as the test file, I don't think it matters at what point you send it, just as long as you send it before the deadline of the testing having to be submitted, which is going to be March the 16th.
Okay. And then I think maybe the last question that we'll take right now is, someone asked if they've missed a social security, meaning that it wasn't entered for like a second party, meaning like if you have two buyers and one, you have is it possible for them to run a report to find missing social security numbers? Because in the exceptions report, they said it's not showing up. So they're wondering if there's a way to find it for that second person. And I think, and you can correct me, that's going to depend on how they've checked off the information for that second person, right? So I'll let you answer that.
Yeah. So if your second person, it depends. So if your second person is a completely second buyer, then it should pull up on your exception report, because they each have to be identified together. But if you have a husband and a wife who are just a single buyer, then it's going to pull, usually it pulls just that primary social. It doesn't always give you that indication for that second. The only report that I know of that's going to pull social, let you know that socials are missing, is the exceptions report. There is no other report out there that we have that's going to show that you're missing that criteria. I believe that any other questions that you guys had, they will address those to you a little bit later on and follow up with emails, and then they will be sending out the link for the for you guys to review the recording at a later time if you needed to go back and review that recording as well.
That's exactly right. Thank you so much, Rhonda. And we will see you guys for our next episode, episode 34, which we will send information about at a later date as well. Thank you so much.
One more thing before you go, guys. I did want to also mention that everything we went over today was kind of broad between both applications of SoftPro, whether you're Select, Enterprise, or Standard. The very last week of this month, we are offering some free webinars on submitting your submission file to 1099s, and they will be specific to your individual applications. So if you go to blog.softprocorp.webinars, you guys can sign up for those free webinars, and they will be specific to the application that you are running. So if you're Enterprise or Standard, make sure you sign up for that webinar. If you're Select, make sure you sign up for Select. And we'll be going through the specifics of exactly what the exception report shows, how you're going to fix a lot of those errors before you send those submission files over.
Yes, and we will be including that information in the email recap along with the video recording from today as well. Thanks so much, Rhonda. We really appreciate it.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye.